wall and welcome to Stingray Tom's Florida and a video that's somewhat different. This is about liminal spaces in the state. If you're unfamiliar with the term, it's an old Latin term with a new use. A limin is a threshold, typically a doorway in ancient Rome, but it also denoted a beginning, as in stepping across the threshold is the start of a trip out of doors. The familiar word subliminal means under the threshold, figuratively below conscious perception. Liminal has recently begun to be used to refer to transitional spaces beyond the threshold of a home. Think of airports and rail stations as being thresholds, places most people travel through rather than to. Smaller spaces include long and quiet hotel corridors, stairwells, and even roads. Liminal has also grown to encompass the feelings such places may evoke in humans, especially when the spaces are empty of people or even abandoned. Think now of an airport without people. Think of an empty hotel corridor which seems to go on forever, has an infinite number of doors, yet no windows. How many of you thought of The Shining? Yes, liminal is used to describe these transitional physical spaces, as well as the emotional and even temporal aspects of them. But the meaning has gone beyond that to any place which feels unusual without people. So no, cemeteries don't typically fit that bill. Today I'll explore a number of Florida spaces which are or have been well known, but which touch on the emotional and temporal aspects of the liminal space concept. Sometimes liminal spaces evoke nostalgia. Imagine seeing a closed attraction you went to as a kid. But they can also trigger something that the author Dan Drnach calls anemoia, a peculiar feeling of nostalgia for a time or place one has never known. It comes from the Greek for wind through the mind. I'll illustrate a number of examples of liminal with my photos, but other than brief introductions, I'll be silent. All the images are of real places, and they were taken when no one was around. That can be described by another word coined by Dan Drnach: Canopsia, the feeling evoked when seeing a place typically full of people in a state of emptiness or abandonment. It's another Greek term that means empty sight. By the way, these are some of the Cypress knees in the archive. They'll become relevant to the video in a little while. This is Bok Tower at Bok Tower Gardens. I start with this because it's an example of the inspiration for this video. Since my photos are often documenting locations in Florida, I normally try to take them without people since the goal is to show only the location. It helps to make the image timeless as well. For instance, this image could have been taken anytime within the last 95 years. But sometimes, to get a photo like this, I have to be very, very patient. As you'll see, the image of the base of this historic tower was taken from the far side of a reflecting pond 500 feet away on a busy Saturday. Silver Springs near Ocala is likely the oldest attraction in the state, with glass-bottomed tour boats first appearing there 150 years ago. For most of the 20th century, it was one of the most popular Florida attractions and was the centerpiece of a number of attractions including a deer park, early American museum, and reptile zoo. Today, it's a state park and has been pared back to the basics of the boat tours and gardens. Lake Placid Tower is one of the 3 tower attractions on U.S. Route 27 along the spine of the state. Along with the Cypress Tower and Bok Tower, it operated for many years, but has been closed to the public for more than 20. Tiki Gardens closed 34 years ago, but unlike the tower, the attraction is long gone, something that left a massive hole in the small town of Indian Shores. Today, the location is a quiet beach access parking lot. The KPO Tree was Clearwater's remarkable destination restaurant like none other, overflowing with traditional Roman designs and over-the-top scenes of nature. Serving its final meal 33 years ago, today the site's still alive and mostly well, and can be hired for events. The Cypress Knee Museum is our 4th former attraction. Tucked away at Fish-Eating Creek in rural Glades County, it's an all but forgotten site that focused on Florida nature, especially the bald cypress tree and its mysterious knees. The museum closed 24 years ago, and the main building sits on state land and still has the ancient cypress growing out of its center. Diagon Alley is not only still open for business, it's one of the most popular parts of a theme park in the world. It never seems to matter how many guests are in Universal Studios in general, Diagon Alley is always full. And that's despite that there's only one ride and it's 20 acres. As you can see in this photo, people are shoulder to shoulder, which is why this is such a contrast. If you add all of Florida's public beaches together, they are the state's most visited attraction. It's certainly common to see thousands of sunbathers, surfers, swimmers, and anglers on most days, even in some of the more remote places. Florida is well known as the flattest state, having the lowest high point in the country. But as level as the majority of the state is, the southern third is almost completely horizontal. In most places, the horizon is defined by distant trees, but there's a couple places where the horizon goes much further because they're essentially tree-free. That's the massive Lake Okeechobee and its unique neighbor, the majestic Everglades. Okeechobee is so immense that you can't see the far shore, but it's also remarkably shallow and contains thousands of micro-islands. The Everglades is actually a 60-mile wide river that slowly flows about a half a mile a day, meaning water takes nearly 6 months to reach Florida Bay. There's dozens of Florida forts, including the Castillo de San Marcos, begun in 1672, and which is the oldest masonry fort in the continental U.S. 3 other Florida forts, shown here, are later, 1787, 1829, and 1847. They're Fort San Carlos de Barrancas, Fort Pickens, and Fort Clinch. Barrancas and Pickens are part of the sprawling Gulf Islands National Seashore, while Clinch is a state park. While they're open to the public, they often feel haunted, as there's so many dark, hushed, and empty parts that were once filled with soldiers, cannons, and supplies. Thank you for watching another of my videos. I hope you enjoyed it. If you learned something, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel for more on Florida's tourism history. Stingray Tom's Florida, traveling through time around the Sunshine State.